Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and today we're going to be covering an archetype voted on by my patrons. Each month they get to put in a vote for what theme I cover, and this month we're covering some of the fittest fighters to jump over the ropes. Go Onizuka, George Gore in the dub and the Gore to his fans, is a long-running character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, starting off as a celebrity duelist themed around wrestlers. But that's not what we're talking about today. See, after some time, his repeated failures and comparisons to the far more popular Playmaker chafed him something fierce. He used to be at the top of the game, and now someone else had taken the spotlight. And so, unable to cope with his pride being wounded, the Gore turned to bounty dueling, hoping to hunt down Playmaker and take him out for good. And this new role in life came with a new deck. So put away the warriors, cause it's time for a prehistoric pummeling with Dinowrestlers Explained. Today's episode is possible thanks to viewers like you, as well as my patrons. If you like what I do here, I would super appreciate it if you'd subscribe to help us reach another wonderful milestone video. And if you want to support me directly while getting some awesome benefits, check out the link to my Patreon in the description below. So, what's the deal with Dinowrestlers? Well, they're a series of mostly Earth attribute dinosaur-type monsters. Like with most Vrains-era decks, or really modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks in general, the primary focus is getting a bunch of material onto the board so that you can make your extra deck monsters, where most of our power resides. The Dinowrestlers aren't quite as good as this is Goki's were, and in fact I would argue Dinowrestlers are just bad in general, but make up for this by providing a variety of utility effects, ranging from protective hand traps to eclectic board-wide protections. Also, each one is named after a kind of dinosaur mixed with some kind of martial art, which is just really cool to see in general, and gives me a whole new range of puns that I can work with. Dinowrestler Marshall Ampello is a level 1 monster with 600 attack and 0 defense, and during damage calculation, if your other Dinowrestler monster battles an opponent's monster with an equal or higher attack, as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, and for that battle, your monster can't be destroyed and the battle damage you take is halved. And when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from your grave to add a Dinowrestler monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. Right off the bat, we're introduced to a sub-theme of the Dinowrestlers, the Marshals, which act as kinda hand traps in response to Dinowrestler battles. And this one is weird, because it's a protective hand trap that eventually replaces itself, and I've seen worse. Like, you take less damage, your monster is safe for an attack, and if they press the assault to try and punch it a second time, you get a search. Battle Fader doesn't get you a search, and that defined a format. But, that was a format long before our current stage of power creep, and this card is much the same. Heck, it was outclassed on release, so it's not doing much to Ampello up your game plan. Dinowrestler Seela Salat is a level 2 tuner monster with 100 attack and 800 defense, and if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. If summoned this way, it can't be used as link material except for the link summon of a Dinowrestler monster, but you can only special summon Seela Salat once per duel this way. That's right, Dinowrestlers came out at around the same point in Vrains where a bunch of different archetypes were dabbling back into the previous extra deck types before links were introduced, and this gives us a little synchro splash to go along with them. And thankfully, despite the link restriction, we can still use it for our own on-theme monsters, because I guess we can let link monsters have whatever material requirements they want, but we've got to draw a line at using a free monster form. We've never let that happen before. Aside from that, it's a free body, not really a lot to talk about. Or should I say, not see lot to talk about. Dinowrestler Marshall Ankilo is a level 2 monster with 1000 attack and 0 defense, and during damage calculation, if another Dinowrestler monster you control battles an opponent's monster as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, and that monster you control can't be destroyed by that battle. Also, the attack of the opponent's battling monster is halved until the end of the damage step. During the end phase, if this card is in your grave because it was sent there from the field this turn, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. That's a pretty nasty battle trick. Having something's attack basically ensures it loses out in battle, but even if it doesn't, your monster is still safe from that battle, so you'll walk away with only a -1 and a bloody nose. Also, you get it back for free at the end of the turn if you somehow manage to put this onto the board before using its effect. Though I don't know why you would ever really do that. Putting it on the board makes it very vulnerable to getting run over in battle first, so proper sequencing outs this card, and you never want to be relying on your opponent not knowing how your cards work. That being said, this does synergize with our boss monsters that we'll see later on in the video, and still probably has the best effect out of all of our hand traps. We've only got a few martial Dinowrestlers, but out of all of them, I'm pretty partial to this martial. Dinowrestler Capaptera is a level 3 wind monster to mix things up a little bit, with 1600 attack and 0 defense. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target a monster your opponent controls and send it to the grave. And if this card is sent to the grave as link material for the link summon of a Dinowrestler monster, you can activate this effect, boosting the attack of the link monster that used it as material by 1000 until the end of the turn. This is one of the best Dinowrestlers in the main deck pool. It's free removal every turn as long as you have the lower monster count, and it doesn't even destroy. It sends, which gets around a lot of protection effects. And when you cash it in for a link monster, it gets even bigger. But you probably remember this as one of the best pools in any limited series you've watched that has gotten to this point. And for good reason. It's great removal that's easy to pull from packs, and it's stealthy as all get out. Well, I mean, I was told it was stealthy. I heard the P's were silent, but I had to say all of them in this name. Dinowrestler Veilonix is a level 3 monster with 1600 attack and 0 defense, and if only your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. And while you control a Link 3 or higher Dinowrestler monster, face-up monsters you control are unaffected by the activated effects of your opponent's Link 3 or lower monsters. So it's not a very universal protection effect, especially now that we're away from Link monsters being the most dominant force in the game, but in the context of the era, it's pretty neat, though not particularly good. Link 3 and below covers a lot of really good monsters, especially at the time, including the ones that everyone was using, the Nightmares. But with only 1600 attack, this isn't going to stand up to basically any opposition. But hey, at least it's still another free guy you can get out of your hand, right? It's certainly not getting any marks for the Wolverine cosplay. It's only got one blade on each hand. Won't stop him from being excited about it though. Look at that face. Dinowrestler Capoeiraptor is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense, and this attack position card can be destroyed by battle. If this card is attacked, change it to defense position at the end of the damage step. And during the standby phase, if this card is in defense position, you can special summon another copy of Capoeiraptor from your deck. This is, oh God, what is going on with this card? It's got a reverse goblin attack force effect on it, changing when it gets attacked without even having close to that much attack power. But like, if it doesn't get killed for having 0 defense, you get another copy, so hey, at least you get more material, but why would you bother? There's so many hoops to jump through for this, for what, a Link 2 monster? A rank 4? There are so many other better enablers out there for that. How did the representative of the world-renowned sexy dance fighting fall to such a low? Dinowrestler Cystegosaur is a level 4 monster with 1900 attack and 0 defense, and if this card is special summoned, you can add a Dinowrestler monster or a World of Dino Wrestling from your deck to your hand. During the end phase, if this card is in your grave because it was sent there this turn, and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target a Dinowrestler monster in your grave, accept a copy of this card, and special summon it. So this is a bit of a step up from our other cards. It's not as plug and play as Stratos is, you can't just drop it out of your hand on a normal summon and get a +1, but as a summon target for other effects, it sure is. But do we have good search targets? Well, I'll let you judge the monsters as they come up, but let's take a quick peek at that named card, World Dino Wrestling. It's a field spell card that, while you control a Dinowrestler monster, each player can attack with only one monster during each battle phase. If your Dinowrestler monster attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 200 attack during damage calculation only, and if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can banish this card from your grave to special summon a Dinowrestler monster from your deck. Basically, all the on-field effects are lame, with the attack limiting effect only synergizing with like one Dinowrestler, but the grave effect rules, giving you a way to pull out the Dinowrestlers that you need as long as you're behind on monsters. And trust me, we have a really good one coming up later on. But the grave effect takes the wind out of my sails again. I mean, you have to wait till the end phase, you have to have less monsters than your opponent, every part of this just feels bad to use, despite the fact that it has the best attack stat that we've covered so far. And remember, basically every dinosaur monster that's level 4 or lower has to contend with Soul-Eating Oviraptor for a spot in your deck list. So it's not good enough to be good enough, they've really got to get you Russian for it. Dinowrestler Martial Anga is a level 5 monster with 1600 attack and 0 defense, and during damage calculation, when your Dinowrestler monster battles a monster with an equal or higher attack as a quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the grave, and your battling monster can be destroyed by that battle. Also, end the battle phase after the damage step. Once per turn, during the end phase, if this card is in the grave because it was sent there to activate this effect this turn, and your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card. What is with this theme and needing you to be behind on monsters? I mean, there's one big monster that it makes sense for, and you probably already know what one that is, but for little mooks trying to get their floating effects to go off, this is embarrassing! This is part of an era that would introduce Link Cross for crying out loud, but second stringer anime archetypes have to struggle for delayed conditional revival? We can't even normal summon this if it's stuck in our hand because it's level 5! Sorry. Cards like this being printed this late into the game cycle gets me upset. This was released in the same set as the second wave of Orchist support. You know, the wave that turned it into a meta-defining super threat? The one that let you use a Link monster as Xyz material? The one that had a searchable counter trap that banished and then searched you more cards? This would barely pass the vibe check if we printed this when Monarchs were big. This is getting me really angry. Dinowrestler ReonPotato is a level 5 monster with 1600 attack and 0 defense, and when your Dinowrestler monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position, and your opponent can't target other Dinowrestler monsters you control with card effects. This one's less egregious than some of our previous examples. Fighting is something Dinowrestlers like to do, so tying a reward to hitting a cheap shot seems on point. But it doesn't trigger upon entering the battle phase, and it doesn't trigger on attacking. We have to deal actual factual battle damage. So if our opponent is able to wall us with anything, a monster, an effect, really anything, then we have no quick way to get ReonPotato out of our hand. Maybe if any monster we talked about previously had piercing battle damage, that would change. But that's not the case here. However, summon it out via other means, and now you have a way to prevent targeting for our on-theme monsters, which is pretty nice. Hard to complain about that. But I still wouldn't go out of my way to recruit this monster. It's not really worth it to ride all the way out to its neck of the woods. Dinowrestler Eskrima is a level 6 monster with 2200 attack and 0 defense, and if you control a Dinowrestler monster, you can normal summon this card without tributing. During your turn, if your opponent special summons any number of monsters while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can target a level 4 or lower Dinowrestler monster in your grave and special summon it. Then, add this card to your hand. Now, on the surface, this card seems incredible. You can discard it to pay for the cost of another effect. Then, it helps get other Dinowrestlers out of your grave, going back into your hand, and then letting you do that all over again. But it's all about the wording of the effect. This triggers if your opponent special summons any number of monsters during your turn, so you won't be able to summon them on their turn to get some extra value and blockers. It's only when they try to summon while you're the turn player. So it's not the bastion of radical value it might seem to be on the surface. Still, it has its uses, especially as a companion to Sealas Salat. Special summon that level 2 tuner, and now you have a Dinowrestler on board, allowing you to bring back Eskrima with a normal summon, giving you 8 levels worth of synchro material. And hey, that puts it in the graveyard so you can revive Sealas Salat later, and then normal summon this to make another level 8 synchro. The summon trigger may be a bit awkward, but it's not unheard of at present for your opponent to try to pull stuff like this in the current meta. Bestials exist after all. That being said, it should probably update its weapons. Eskrima seems like a pretty cool martial art, but borrowing your tools from Marowak seems like a bad idea. Dinowrestler Iguanodraka is a level 6 monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense, and you can discard one other dinosaur monster to special summon this card from your hand. You can tribute a dinosaur monster, then target a Dinowrestler monster in your grave with a different original name from the tributed monster and special summon it in defense position. This isn't quite so bad of a summon. I've heard of worse hurdles than set up your graveyard, and it even comes with a revive of its own. Or rather, a trading booth that turns unappealing dinosaurs into main card participants, as long as you keep it interesting and make sure to rotate the roster. Heck, it can even tribute itself if you need to. But because you have to summon the card in defense position, you'll have to make use of it quick. We're not exactly calling in fresh meat from the locker rooms here. Veilonix is still nursing a savage right hook they took during the last round, and Capaptera got blasted by some Ignister card called I Knock You Out, so we're not exactly working at 100% here. Still, it gets a big thumbs up from me. A really pointy thumbs up too. Look at those bugles! Dinowrestler PANKRATOPS is a level 7 monster with 2600 attack and 0 defense, and if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. But you can only special summon copies of PANKRATOPS once per turn, this way. As a quick effect, you can tribute a Dinowrestler monster, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. Here it is, folks. After 4 whole pages of mediocre card design, we have arrived at a card that was played in basically every single deck for as long as it was legal. Not that it was ever banned, mind you, but after a little over a year of it saturating the playfield, it got hit to 1, and for good reason. While I've maligned the while you have less cards than your opponent summoning condition from previous cards, it actually works a lot better with PANKRATOPS because you can proactively summon it from your hand and not wait for a frickin' turn delay. Not to mention that it also opened up the possibility of you summoning this even after you've established a board, making it much more flexible than cards like Cyber Dragon or Terror Top. Combine that with a huge, enormous body and the ability to pop a card at quick effect speed, and you can see why this card was tearing up the competitive circuit. If anything ever threatened to remove PANKRATOPS, you could just tribute it off to trade for another card, so it was basically always a lose-lose for the opponent when this was in play. Unless they somehow had even further interaction that could mess with this, like Called by the Grave, but even then, that's your opponent spending even more resources to stop a play that took basically no effort to get off the ground. Nowadays, this card is back to 3, owing to how the game has evolved even further to where we are now, in a meta where we can't even spend 3 slots on a big utility card. But it is now available for any rogue deck to run if they need a bit of a power boost to juice up their plays. In fact, it's when your opponent least expects it that this card is most satisfying, letting you use Pank to spank the competition. Alright, that does it for the main deck. Now it's time for the extra deck, and the first order of business are the fusion cards? That's right, we're leading with Dinowrestler Chimera T-Rexel, a level 8 fusion monster with 3500 attack and 0 defense, requiring a Dinowrestler Link monster and any Dinowrestler monster as material. If this card battles, your opponent can't activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step, as well as dealing piercing battle damage. Hey, that's where it was hiding. So far, this sounds like we've just reinvented Ancient Gear Golem, but wait, there's more. Your opponent's monsters can't target monsters for attacks except for this one, and if this card destroys a monster by battle, it gains 500 attack. And if this card is destroyed by a card effect, you destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters. Yeah, we've got a big bruiser that says no to back row when pushing for game, does a lot of damage, gets stronger the more it hits stuff, and is a lightning storm when a card effect bumps it off. That's a lot of value. But is the fusion spell any good? Well, this is the only fusion we have, so we might as well take a look, and thankfully, it's not half bad. Tyrant Dino Fusion is a quick play spell card that fusion summons a Dinowrestler monster from your extra deck, using monsters you control as fusion material. So nothing from your hand, but if you do, the first time that face-up monster on the field would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. This doesn't fall off at any period of time, so you don't have to feel pressured to throw your monster into the jaws of danger to get value out of this. That shield will stick around for quite a while. But the part that's got me most hype is that it's a quick play spell card that fusion summons during the battle phase with no restriction to it. So you can fit in an extra Chimera T-Rexel attack with your other monsters to help close out the game. It's pretty rad. Meeting an on-theme Link monster is pretty rough, but, you know, I've seen worse. Though the name does throw me off a bit. I'm used to chimeras being made of multiple different creatures. If we stack 3 dinosaurs on top of each other, isn't that more of like a Dino Hydra? I'm getting too in the bestiary about this. Dinowrestler Giga Spinosavat is a level 8 synchro monster with 3000 attack and 0 defense, requiring a dinosaur tuner and one or more non-tuner monsters as material. If this card battles, your opponent can't activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step, and your opponent's monsters can't target monsters for attacks except for this one. Once per turn, you can target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it, and if this card would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can destroy cards you control instead. This makes for a very sturdy creature as long as you have other cards to feed to the destruction replacement effect. And while this doesn't have piercing like Chimera does, you do just get to take out a monster once per turn to help clear the way instead. This is a pretty simple synchro, but an effective one, not only providing a lot of aggro tools, but like with Chimera, the attack prevention towards your other monsters means Dinowrestlers like ReonPotato are a lot safer. Also, I've gotta give it points for style. Look at this thing! It's like if they turned the White Ranger into a masked wrestler. This rules. Dinowrestler Parkourio is a Link 2 monster with 1000 attack, requiring 2 Dinowrestler monsters as material. If you activate World Dino Wrestling, you can target a Dinowrestler monster in your grave and add it to your hand, possibly the only time in which activating World Dino Wrestling was a good idea. If this card is sent to the grave as Link material, you can target a Dinowrestler monster in your grave and special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Dinowrestler monsters. That's a nice way to help make sure you have a spare Dinowrestler monster on board for Tyrant Dino Fusion, and you aren't using it for much else either, since there won't be a Link 4 you can make under the Dinowrestler lock. This makes for a decent rung up the Link ladder to get to our big boss monster, with Stegosaur being the best material to use because if you special summoned it, you get World Dino Wrestling, which gives you a chance to activate Parkourio's effect, leading to more recursion. Other than that though, this card doesn't do anything but provide more value to your other plays, which is a necessary role, but a boring one. I guess Parkourio really is overrated. Dinowrestler King T-Rexel is a Link 3 monster with 3000 attack, requiring 2 or more Dinowrestler monsters as material. If this card battles, say it with me folks, your opponent can't activate spell or trap cards until the end of the damage step, and your opponent can't target monsters for attacks except this one. Okay, time for the good stuff. At the start of the opponent's battle phase, you can target an attack position monster your opponent controls, and this battle phase, your opponent cannot attack with other monsters until that one has, and if it does not declare an attack, destroyed at the end of the battle phase. This ends up comboing pretty well with World Dino Wrestling as it turns out, because once you force the attack from one monster, your opponent can't attack with any other monsters, keeping them from leveraging any other gigantic combat threats they might have. And if they don't want to push with that monster that you chose, you'll break its back and make it really humble. Though, honestly, I'd prefer if we didn't pop it. This way they'd have to find a way to get rid of the monster that's keeping them from attacking effectively, but, beggars can't be choosers. But if we're being honest here, I would fuse this away for Chimera T-Rexel the second I could, because that jerry-rigged copy of the Dark Door is just boring. And if there's anything that kills a duel and a wrestling match, it's boredom. Alright, so that's all of the Dinowrestler cards. Yeah, we ended up folding the only 2 spells in the theme into the monster segments. So what do we do with them? Well, we've got a couple of pretty fancy boss monsters, and good grief is PANKRATOPS a house to contend with, but the rest is pretty bland. Part of the problem is that Dinowrestlers don't really have enough going on as a compelling argument to run them over the generic dinosaur pile. Or heck, even just running Transcendosauruses. But this is a Dinowrestler video, so we will look up what we can play to help boost their chances as best we can, and see what dinosaur synergies we can bring into the mix. So what can we play to help them out? First, let's get the easy ones out of the way. Fossil Dig is basically a souped-up reinforcement of the army that gets you every on-theme Dinowrestler except PANKRATOPS, sadly. But aside from that, you can basically count on having any member of the theme at any time that you want. It even grabs off-theme options, namely Soul-Eating Oviraptor, which itself can search out any dinosaur monster on summon, including PANKRATOPS, so thank goodness, we're saved. It also gets Dogoron the Mad Flame Kaiju, which is nifty because if you want to remove an opponent's monster, but want to maintain their monster count so you can use your Dinowrestler effects that care about the number of your opponent's monsters, swapping out a problem monster with a Kaiju solves that problem. Another really good search target is Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, probably still the #1 threat in any dinosaur deck bar none. Sadly, very few Dinowrestlers have direct synergy with being destroyed by a card effect, and the one that does, Chimera T-Rexel, actually has an anti-synergy with UCT. Hard to destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters when all of them just got flipped face down. And who could forget everyone's favorite meme card, Miscellaneousaurus? You can go to any of my other dino videos for the joke, I ain't doing it for this one. Suffice it to say, it helps keep our plays untouchable for a phase, and in our case, helps get Silas Salat onto the field so we can sync up into Giga Spinosavat. Our level 6 monsters are actually surprisingly easy to field, positioning us to make good use of Evolzar's Lars and Solda, though with our abundance of level 4s, we also make good use of Dolka and Lagia. We were already dabbling in fusions and synchros, so we might as well add Xyz into the mix. Since we dislike having World Dino Wrestling on the board, it's a good thing there's another really good Dino Field spell card we can lean on, Lost World, which debuffs everything on the field by 500 attack and defense except dinosaur monsters, meaning we can punch over even harder than we were beforehand, and making some of our less gifted monsters go toe-to-toe with things above their weight class. Not to mention, we get to mess around with their ability to target things with that Jura Egg token we give them, which is also a very nifty monster to swing in with Chimera T-Rexel, what with the token having 0 defense and all. Enjoy 3,500 points of piercing damage! Tyrant Dino Fusion is cool and all, but it's not searchable, so while it can help dole out massive damage, we may want to consider another angle, and that's where Kaitop Terra comes in. It gets you polymerization every turn, it's a great card to banish off of UCT because it'll come right back with the recycled polymerization, and is one half of the materials to make Hornosaurus, which then becomes any field spell that you want, 2,000 points of direct damage, and an additional normal summon. And I don't know about you, but I love extra normal summons. As for a silly tech pick, Dynabase is always looking for a home. It's intended to be used with Dynatank, which essentially turns any dinosaur monster into an effect redirector, and when it's destroyed, it floats into any graveyard dino, which I'm a fan of. Even if the attack of the dinosaur ends up being bad, we can just use this as a blocker until we get the float. But that's not the only card we can make with Dynabase. Storage Pod uses some niche monsters, Stegocyber and Trifortress to make a decently sized body that punishes when monsters are special summoned from the hand, which, hey, PANKRATOPS has a knack for doing that. Though if you want something that helps you to ensure that your opponent will always have more monsters than you do, you might want to consider playing Ojama Trio. That's really going to give them a ton of monsters. And while it may seem like it's out of character for me to recommend an Ojama card, remember that this card gives our opponent Ojamas, which means that they have to deal with it. And anytime they're annoying the opponent is more time they're not annoying me. And that's everything I've got to say about Dinowrestlers. I'm gonna be honest, going into this, my expectations were super charged up thanks to PANKRATOPS' performance, but walking away, I'm actually just kind of sad. This is such a massive downgrade from Goki in almost every sense, and I'm sad to see that the gore settled for such a mediocre theme when trying to get the supervillain power spike, though that is a good a reason as any for him to go back to the good side in Season 3, but we'll give him some dignity and chalk it up to having a good character arc. Maybe another wave of Dinowrestler support in the future will help them realize their full potential, but as it stands now, the only thing they'll be wrestling with is their identity. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Do you agree that Dinowrestlers are in dire need of a little help from the doc? Or do they have the grit to push past the haters? And which one's your favorite? I've got to give it up for Giga Spinosavat. I know I was already fawning over them during their own section, but god damn is their design clean. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and the Critic of Innocence, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Hair Bear, Happy Majin, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander711, Carp, Marion James E. Bacata, Mike Cook, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yami Nair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bactboos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, Thievery Coast and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthrak, Baden von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzebub, Fish, Beluga Master, Blitzwolf, Charlie Mercury, again, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Entity RIP, Eva Padilla, Gary Lickbread, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru02, Manga Pages, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rain, Rhyme Kairos, Shizuka Nijimura, Sirnite JCB, Sophie, apparently, Sphilia, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown and Zal Dureka, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another video featuring some of Vrains' classics, check out this video where I cover Marincess. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.